And we are live. Good evening, everyone. Hello and welcome. It's time for another episode of IT Career in Australia channel. And tonight's topic is building high-performing technology leadership teams. Thank you so much for finding some time this evening to join us. Please don't forget to introduce yourselves in the comments. Let us know what you do and join our conversations with your questions and comments. Or as usual, at least say hi in the comments that we know that you're here and you're listening, because otherwise it's kind of sad that you're not saying hi because we don't know that you're here. So I'm Jana Martins, if you forgot. I'm currently working in IT consultancy and I'm passionate about learning more about the present and the future of the tech industry. So always eager to share some interesting topics with you on this YouTube channel. So again, tonight's topic, building high-performing technology leadership teams. And Renzo is going to share his experience on creating strong technology leadership teams, emphasizing leadership principles, some team dynamics, and balancing between individual and team growth for success. So also we'll talk about what is success and how do you know that your leadership team is actually working and then successful. So before I'll pass it over to Renzo to introduce himself, just want to quickly remind you that we streaming live as usual on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. So if you miss the stream, you can always watch the replay on YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe so then you can always watch all the replays. And I go live every Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. Wednesday time with various experts from my network covering a wide range of topics on IT in Australia. I also have a meetup group that I encourage you to join because we have some face-to-face events as well every 6 weeks or so. And also always encourage you to use these live streams to your opportunity to network with people in the industry. So please ask as many questions as you want, but stay on the topic, and the active participants will also receive some nice surprise at the end of the stream as usual. So that's enough of me. Namisha saying hi. Thank you. I like people who are saying hi first. Thank you so much for saying hi. Passing on to Renzo, please.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks, Jana, for opening up. So just to introduce myself, Renzo Mostacci. So I'm I suppose you could say, career CIO of undertaking the head of IT or CIO roles in many organisations. Over the last 3 years, I've been the CIO at 3 different organisations. And I tend to have a tenure of around about 6 years at an organisation. And that really is talks a lot to my approach on how to build strategy and vision for an organisation, and then a couple of rounds of execution. But underpinning any success in that role is probably the most important aspect, is building a very good senior management team for technology.
And that's what we're going to talk about today. Anuradha saying hi as well. Thank you so much, guys, for popping the highs in the comments. Thank you so much. And I can see that a few more people watching. Make sure to say hi. Renzo, I guess before we dive into the building the teams, I just want to ask you a bit more general question. I guess why are you passionate about this topic? Why you so I know I asked you before that stream what sort of topic you would like to talk about, and that was one of the topics that you choose. So what resonates so much for you in this topic?
Yeah, I suppose for me, and it's interesting, originally coming from a technical background myself, one of the things that I've learned over the years, and it's held me in good stead, this thought, is that technology is the most intimate aspect of people in our organisation and the customers of our organisation. That in fact, technology is all about people, and leading teams and putting together good teams is about people. And so that's what I suppose drives my passion most, is people ultimately, because I think that people and technology is absolutely inseparable, and you can't succeed in one without succeeding in the other.
And I think that's been the ongoing discussion with a lot of my speakers. We always maybe start talking about technology, but in reality, we always talk about people, communication skills, soft skills. They always go hand to hand with anything. And when we're talking about any career progressions, transitions, or anything about the IT industry, all this, it comes down to communication, soft skills, leadership, and all those skills. So I guess, that's what we're talking about today as well. Raj Kumar is also saying hi. Thank you. You hear me that I see you. So thank you for popping hi in the comments. Renzo, I think, before we dive into, the building teams and the culture and everything, maybe just maybe we should define what is actually technology leadership team is. When we're talking about technology leadership team, are we talking about, I don't know, like the upper management, middle management? Like, how would you define it?
Look, I suppose I haven't sat back and specifically defined it, but when I say it, what I'm thinking about is I'm talking about the CIO and their direct reports.
Mm-hmm.
Right, that's the senior team, and part of what we would talk about is what is the purpose of that senior team, right? Why is it there? Why does it exist? And I'll say the first things I'll say would be the obvious thing you've heard a lot of times. It's there to execute the business strategy and objectives, etc. But to dive down into that a little bit more is understanding why that group of people are there, why that senior management team is there. And that team is there to lead. So it's not just the CIO that provides leadership, it's that whole team that's providing leadership. And that's leadership to the organization as a whole, as well as the technology group. And leadership is really about ensuring that we're clear on where we're going. And oftentimes that means always means working very closely with our business peers about, what is the strategy of the organization? Where are we going? And one of the things I often say to my leadership teams is, the management team, first that, is in order for us to lead, our responsibility is to lead. And to lead means that we are working side by side to determine strategy. We're working side by side to even challenge what the business's existing operating models are, what our own operating models are, and what our strategies are. And an important distinction, because people often confuse about what leadership is beyond that. Leadership is not a decision authority. And in a collaborative, collegiate leadership environment of a whole organization, and so this goes to the culture of the whole organization, it's important for the technology leadership team to provide leadership and not confuse that with decision authority. Right? And as always, people talk about leadership. Leadership is about influence. It's about trust, having trust in what you're saying, and being able to influence what the decisions are and what other people think, rather than being mandated through some simplistic governance mechanism. And if you're not leading, right, if you're not providing that leadership, you're either standing back and just taking orders and delivering on those, and then that's just a service delivery group. Right? It's certainly not strategic in any way. Or you get an even worse outcome where the technology group butts head with the rest of the organization.
Nimisha actually has a question specifically for you now when we start talking about leadership. She's actually asking, how did you make your transformation from technology to leadership role?
Well, it's interesting. Like there are things that can occur simultaneously and together, and I think it's important as a CIO or as in a leadership role within a technology group, that you are a technology leader. I'm very strongly of the view that you can't undertake any leadership role in any part of an organization or any industry unless you have a very good grasp of that particular domain. I don't subscribe to the notion that, a manager's a manager, can manage anything, or a leader's a leader, can lead in anything. I think you must have domain mastership. So in my case, certainly, whilst I don't have as in-depth as some of people in my groups in those areas, I will always maintain a very strong understanding of all technology, irrespective of what that is, whether it's ranging from, the latest thoughts on human-centered design through to the network architectures and designs to assure security. It's all very much interest for me. And I started off in the technology area. Now, I did early on in my career, as I climbed through the technology roles, it became apparent to me that, whilst I was okay at doing that, and I found it very interesting, and still find the technology side extremely interesting. There are so many good people around that can do that, and I suppose I look to myself and my own capabilities, and people leadership is always something that's been part of what I've done right from when I was at school, in leadership roles at school, leadership roles with respect to sport, leadership roles even within friend groups. And so it is a particular, oftentimes it's about a personality characteristic, but it's also, I suppose, people leadership, because that's what leadership is. It's about people. People leadership is about, having a really strong set of values and principles, and really staying true to those always, and doing things every day that are consistent with those values, and working on, and that's a key underpinning to ensure that people will trust and follow you. And for people to trust and follow you, you need to be able to trust them as well, and be interested in them, and I suppose underscoring all of that, always be humble, and knowing that you need to assemble the right people around you to have the right input, to know what the right things are to do. Apologies for a long answer for that.
Now, actually, there is I guess different schools of thoughts regarding leadership, and there is definitely one school of thought that thinks that you need to be born as a leader, so that some of the leadership skills can't be taught. So that some people, they naturally tend to be better at leading people. So do you believe that there is some sort of predisposition like that, or do you believe that leadership skills can be learned through the career easily?
So no, you don't need to be born with it, right? And you can learn all of the skills, but not easily, right? And it's also not insurmountable or too hard either. It is about, as with learning anything, is clearly defining and understanding what it is that you need to learn. However, fundamentally, to be in a leadership role, probably the most important thing is you've got to really want it, and want it for the right reasons in order to develop those skills and attributes. To be in a leadership role, you've got to want to be in a leadership role because you do want to lead people, right? You do hold a strong set of values that where you're very ethical and you care about people, but at the same time that doesn't mean you're soft in any way, but you care, and you need to have a strong or high levels of confidence in being able to put yourself out there for people to follow, but also have the confidence necessary in order to get the input needed to design a way forward. Every good leader is not about coming up with the answers yourself.
Definitely. And then Nimisha have kind of additional questions to that. Do you think
Sure.
certain years of minimum experience is required to progress to leadership role?
What it is there's a certain amount of life experience. It's not necessarily experience in technology itself, albeit, as I said before, that you do need to have strong grasp on the domain in which you would be a leader in. Right? So if you were to be in a CIO role, you do need to have sufficient experience or mastery of the domain across many domains of technology. Not every single one, but you've got to have the ability where you can quickly get across new concepts, because new technology capabilities are emerging every day. And certainly that's why people do studies in particular areas. So it's not necessarily minimum years. It's I said it goes more to life experience, because life experience is about people as well, right? And so every day of your life, as you go through life, you can be developing your leadership experience. You don't have to be in a team lead role to get leadership experience. You can do that at in your own community, right? Be it your children's school, where you join groups in and contribute to the outcomes of that school, and perhaps sit on a P&F committee, or it might be in the local sporting clubs, or it might be other social contexts you have, and maybe in your church. There are opportunities to hone your leadership skills every day.
Yeah, I love this point. I love this point, Renzo, because sometimes people kind of get stuck in the mindset that unless they managing someone, unless they have some people to lead and people to report to, they can't really practice their leadership skills. But yeah, life give you opportunity all the time.
Yeah, there's another thing that I say to many of my staff is that leadership is not about a hierarchy reporting, right? Because a lot of the leadership you're providing is providing leadership to the broader organisation and sector, sometimes the whole sector, and so beyond your organisation. So leadership is not about, like I said, it's not about decision authority, who's in charge, who's not in charge. Leadership is about bringing people on the journey, right? And so the most important leadership skills are those influencing ones, which are outside of the people that you manage. Now, yes, there are important skills on managing direct reports, right? And that's something that you can certainly learn and do short courses on and learn about. But yeah, leadership occurs every day. Leadership occurs every day. Well, leadership opportunities. And there's probably a related point, a broader point, on that thing about, well, how do I get experience? All these jobs say I need experience. How do I get experience if I don't get an opportunity to do the job? And I've said this to many, many people, and I've done it myself. Don't wait to get the job to start doing the work. If you want your boss's job, don't wait till you get that job. Just start doing parts of their work. And you have to do yours, and you start doing part of their work. Ask them, say, can I do that for you? Start doing it, and that you get experience. And then you have to understand that you're doing it to try and get that experience, and also to contribute in a positive way to the organisation. But when it comes to talking about, do you have experience? Yes, I have. I wasn't formally in the role, but I actually took on the lead role to do A, B, C, and D. Right? And then you can articulate, and you have to understand what it was about that doing that work that that demonstrated your leadership skills.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think it's been an ongoing discussion here as well on this channel as well about not waiting for the role, making sure to be proactive, making sure to find those transferable skills that you can apply in a different area. Network within your own organization. Find the sponsors in your own organization, to find the mentors to follow and to build these skills. But I want to just go back to the building part, building that leadership teams. I know we also mentioned that how important the culture is to make sure that we're building the right team. So we already obviously discussed the leadership component of that. But what else is really important? Like how we can build that right culture to make sure that we're building the team that can building the team for success.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll also lend off one of the other questions that are in the chat there about how do you hire someone for your leadership team.
I'll just bring it up to the screen. Yeah. How do you hire someone for your technology leadership team? What soft skills and tested or interviewed for?
Yeah. All right. So building the right team is there's quite a few aspects to building the right team, but mostly I'll start off with maybe touching on what is a team and what do I expect from a team. So when I'm building it, so if you're really clear on why does this team exist and how will it work, and a key part of the leader of that team, so myself as the CIO, is to define what sort of team it will be, because there are many different models, right? But I'll share with you my approach. And so I'm very much, as you might grasp, a people person, right? So for me, it is very much about how the team and the individuals interact. So, however, before I get there, one of the things that I do demand from everyone in the team is that they are highly accountable for their domain, be it the CISO or the chief data officer or the person running all of operations and a number of the other roles, that they are completely accountable for the outcomes in their areas. At the same time, my expectation is that they will always work together to actually help each other achieve their outcomes, right? It won't be, so in me being the leader of that team, the information doesn't flow up through me and down, never. It's always directly between the team members. So there's a particular fit there that goes to, are people truly able to work in a team environment where they not only that they care about and are able to help fellow team members achieve their outcomes, right? And that they will equally accept input from others. Now, that help and that input sometimes is exactly that, helping to go forward, but it means that being able to take criticism, being able to debate different ways of doing things and being able to have open discussion. And I suppose that reflects a little bit of my own background. The house I grew up in, right, debated everything all the time. Always. There was always debated, whether it was politics or cooking, it didn't matter. Everything was debated, but it was a positive thing and you always felt good. Others from outside might think you're arguing, but you're not. Certainly when my wife first came to my family home, she thought we're all arguing, but we're not. But I bring that to teams where there must be constant debate and testing, because particularly in an area like technology, there are so many different perspectives and you've got to get it right. Right? It doesn't matter how long it takes or how much debate it takes, you've got to get it right. So indicative of that, for example, is that just the type of governance mechanisms you set up within the group itself. So a governance mechanism is that all new proposals or any solutions that are being put forward by architects or others that may be part of a larger project or program for different parts of the business, everything always goes through a technology design review group. And that design is actually, and what people are required to do is to bring it to that group, not when they've got the final design, but when they're thinking about the problem and getting feedback on the definition of the problem, getting feedback on the various approaches that may be considered, and then finally getting feedback on final solutions that are being proposed. And that takes quite a bit of investment of time, but I can't tell you how much time it saves because you get it right. You get it right. And it helps everyone. But going back to the team, it is, so part of that selection of the team members are people that are comfortable to work in that type of environment. And so they are people that are able to communicate and articulate their ideas and can interact together. Right? So when I'm looking at people and saying, how do I select individuals? That's what sort of skills, but it's those communication skills. It goes without saying they've got to have the domain mastery. And then it's for me, it's understanding how they've gone about the team member role, how they do leadership of their own people, and just as importantly, leadership across the organisation. Because one of the things I will do with all team members is I will always push them forward, and they will always be out there in the business, facing the business, working with the business, and are known. All the leadership team are known across the organisation. Right? It'll always be them first before me.
And I guess how do you balance those technical expertise and the leadership skills? Yeah, I'm sure there will be some positions that you still need that technical expertise covered. So how do you balance it? Still, would you firstly look for that leadership skills, or you need to make sure where is that balance?
Simply put, if you lack either one, you will fail. So it's not about, if I'll trade one off. No, so okay. Let me be fair and try to answer your question. I won't compromise on leadership skill. Right? The domain mastery must be good enough. Right? But having said that, if wherever I've taken that approach and the domain mastery hasn't been as strong, they've always struggled, and it's always been tough for them, right? It's really difficult to succeed unless you have that domain mastery. You can't, And if you don't have the leadership skill and the team skills, you struggle as well. So it doesn't matter what. It's almost like you can't compromise.
But I guess you will give someone the benefit on the doubt if they have a great leadership skills and maybe you're not sure about their domain knowledge. You'll still give them a go.
Yeah. Maybe. Maybe. We're like let me put it another, not knowingly, because I won't get it right every time at all. I won't be able to assess all skills and capabilities all the time, because there's a limit on that, being my own knowledge and skills. And where I get it wrong, that person really struggles, right? And for me, it's I find I feel a great sense of responsibility to anyone that I hire, that I'm not setting them up for failure, that they are the right person for the job. Because if I don't get that right, it's not going to be a good experience for them, right? And it's it's quite hard. But I suppose to complement that, whenever I do a hire, I will work with every member of my team in providing them guidance and direction, and sometimes you could say even mentoring, to do everything I can to ensure that they're successful.
Yeah, and I guess just building up a little bit on Nimisha's question, how do you actually measure it? Like, how do you measure someone's leadership skills, especially if you only have, 3 rounds of interviews, if any, and you're trying to assess someone's leadership skills. And do you have any trick for that?
No. Well, not tricks, but there are techniques. So it's interesting to see when you sort of sit with someone and just get in a conversation like we are, how much you can learn about them. Right? So the first thing I look for, right, is, other than what we've already talked about so far, is their degree of openness. Right? So I'm looking for someone that is actually going to engage in a conversation and share things about themselves, right? And is not afraid to do so, right? Because to be a great leader, you've got to expose yourself constantly, right? So you can't be trying to protect yourself constantly. So if I see someone's, not able to articulate, in in some level of detail the nuances of the different experiences they've had, then either they don't have the experience or they're not willing or unable to share and, let's say, be vulnerable to some extent. So that's a quick, that's usually one of the main indicators, other than the fact is, you know, are the, let's say, the stories they tell, the experiences they relate, their philosophies and their approaches that they articulate, you know, they've got to be up to scratch as well. You know, they've got the level of experience in that particular technology domain that actually gives them that technical basis. But otherwise, it's about how they tell their story.
Yeah. So I want to just go back now to that, you know, building bit. I know we have, touch on a few points, but let's go back to, you know, that covering the basis topic, because, you know, obviously we were looking for these leadership skills, particular technical skills, but how do you actually decide what skill sets you need, who's responsible for what?
So this is very much the responsibility of the leader, right? Whether the team, in my case, is CIO, the senior management team. It's the responsibility of the role to get the design right. Okay, so you do. Now, having said that, I will always consult, and I don't mean consult so as that you know what I'm doing. I mean consult so as I can get your ideas, right, and test my own ideas, right? So it's not like a formal consultation process. It's true leadership consultation where you're trying to make sure that you come up with what's the best thing for your organization. So here, you know, when we're talking about covering all the bases, is the design of the leadership team to say, the first thing we look at is to say, in order for this group to be successful, what are all of the things that you've got to be able to do? Right? And so there's a lot of the obvious technology areas. You know, my group will always have a CISO, a chief data officer, a person that heads up all of the infrastructure and operations services. I have a head of strategy and architecture, but then I have, that's not going to be complete. At the end of the day, you know, when you're running a group of this nature, you're running a business. So who's going to do all of the budgeting and all of the legal work and all of the contractual work that are important in underpinning a lot of the vendor relationships? Who's responsible for vendor relationship management, or what does that even mean? So when you think about all of the things that need to be done, it's critical that the design of your team has that covered, right? And that you're really clear which role, or therefore which person, has responsibility for those different things, and which areas are there shared. For example, vendor relationship management may involve a number of people. Right? So who does what? So that's what skill sets do you need, right? And who does what? And you've got to be really, really clear whose responsibility is to do what work. So whilst you say people are going to help each other, you've got to be really clear on, is it my job to design new contracts with technology partners? Whose responsibility is that? All right. Some people in the audience might say, "Oh, but doesn't legal do that?" Right? Or if you've got a new tender, doesn't procurement do that? You have that expertise in those organisations, but you do need to have that leadership capability within the technology group that will lead those legal contracts and get advice and input and partner with the legal group within your organisation. And as the leader of that group, you've got to be interested in every single one of those domains because they're all critical to the success of your organisation. And so the last part of that is about having all the skill set, who does what. The last part of that is partnerships. So ultimately, all of the skill sets you need all of the leadership elements will be within your organisation, but oftentimes to cover off all of the technical capabilities you need in order to execute your strategy, you will have partnering organisations to do that. So defining exactly what roles get covered, or capabilities, so rather not roles, capabilities are covered by in partnerships is important to define. So it's define, and ensuring that you define those partnerships, you engage on a contractual basis. And some people might say, well, if you're doing it contractually, that's almost anti having a good relationship. It's the exact opposite. Having really good contractual basis means you've gone through and you discuss everything. You're actually teasing out, what do I mean? What do you mean? Right? And some people will say, oh, a good contract, once it's written, it goes to the drawer, you never pull it out again. Well, that's probably because of the relationship, but it only occurs if you go through an arduous contract development and process, because that's the basis of your relationship. So just to sum that up, it's about what are all of the leadership skills you need, what are all the domain technology capabilities you need, be very clear on who does what of those, including which partner organizations.
So Renzo, you mentioned a few times about defining everyone's responsibilities. I'm curious, have you ever been in a situation where, maybe you start building the team, where is a different roles, and some tasks just, been missed, or everyone said like, no, that's not my responsibility. That's not my responsibility. It didn't fall to anyone's responsibility. Have you ever been in those sort of situation? Is it a challenge, because it seems like, how do you even think about all the possible scenarios?
I've missed things all the way through my career, all right? And also things keep moving and changing. So there's not a standard recipe, so to speak. I certainly have my rules of thumb about things that need to get covered off, but things continue to evolve. And I do get it wrong. And so there's two things that happen. First, it means I've got to do a whole lot of extra work myself, right? But I use the team. I say, guys, we don't have this covered, right? How are we going to cover this off, right? And as in any good team, they will work with me to go, okay, this is how we'll cover it. Let's divvy it up this way. We'll give Annette this piece here. We'll give Mark this piece over here. But ultimately, it's looking at, making changes to those responsibilities in the team, or changing the way the roles are defined going forward. But when you don't get it right like that, or things need to evolve, you'll always work as a team to solve that.
Yeah, and I guess it's coming back a little bit to that culture, building that right culture. So obviously you have, the set of different roles, head of data, head of platform, head of security. So they build that leadership between each other, but they also obviously part of other different teams, and they have people reporting to them. So when you thinking about the whole organization, how do you even define, because they are part of this leadership team, but they're part of the platform team, or they're part of that team, so they need to make sure that they fit in every team in a way.
And more than that, so yes, they're part of so when I talk to my teams about it, so there's the technology leadership team, they're the leader of their own team, right? They're also part of teams, virtual teams across the organization. Either, oftentimes it might be over a longer period of time, or just for certain periods of time. That might be the extent of a program that might go for a couple of years. So they're part of many teams, and so they actually have multiple roles ultimately. So certainly in trying to define their role, I do look at all of those aspects and their ability to operate in those different leadership contexts. So yes, I'll look at those. So what was the actual question there, other than the fact that there are many different
the challenge is there, because obviously when you build that team, so you build a team that can work between each other there, but you also need to make sure that the same person can work in a different team. So kind of looking at all these aspects, maybe it's a great person to lead that team, but maybe sometimes it's not a great fit between all heads of, for example.
Look, I look for those particular types of leadership qualities that I was articulating before, that might include confidence but humility at the same time. Are willing to be vulnerable and share and seek input, and that's irrespective of the team you're operating in. Even though there's those different types of contexts that you described, and probably others as well, they're enduring qualities that will hold you well in any team. But I'll certainly be watching always how they're operating in those different teams, and asking people in those teams. I'll be talking to them, and I'll be seeking their feedback. I don't go up to them and say, "Can you give me some feedback about Martin?" But I'll talk to them and say how they're going, and get a feel for what's happening. And I mean, I'll ultimately, I will always call out the right type of behaviours that are occurring, either between peers or in the way people have led their teams. I've often done, I say, well, I've seen one of my leadership team that does a great job in leading their people. So I'll actually have them talk about their team, how they're leading their team, and even have them present at our weekly town hall meeting for the whole group about some of those aspects. So it's always about, part of my role is not only walking the talk, but always seeking to reinforce and talk about what good looks like. And that's part of leadership and how you get people to follow where you're going, and reinforcement and guidance. Because my role as a leader is to guide people, right? And that goes somewhat to perhaps, what other people would look like, or what about how do you develop individuals? How do they train? And yes, there are formal training you can do, but my role a lot is as a coach. Right? So leader is a coach, and providing that guides and direction and reinforcement of what looks good.
Nimisha is saying it's very empathetic approach in the hiring process. When Renzo mentioned, I wouldn't hire someone to set up for failure. Very commendable. Thank you. I think the other point that we want to discuss today also, Renzo, so obviously once a team form, it's only the start, yeah? How do we make sure that team evolving? How do we make sure that you know who to hire next, who to promote? So yeah, what's happening next when we already have the team right there?
Yeah, so there is no real starting point and no finish point, as in life. So you walk into an organization, you walk into a team leadership role, there's already people there. So there's no starting point. What is always true is that however you define the problem to be solved, what are the skills you need and the attributes and the roles, that whatever you work out now what you need is going to evolve. Right? Now, you try to build some resilience into your design to say, right, as things evolve in this way, this is still going to be appropriate, but ultimately it's never going to be enduring for more than 18 months or 2 years. You're always going to need to refine and make changes all the time because the context changes, the domain capabilities keep shifting. So it is about developing those individuals, but there's also then people are going to leave ultimately. Right? Now, what I've found is the better team you have, and when I say a good team, is that it's an environment that people want to be in, then your turnover rate is much lower, but there's still going to be turnover. So you do need to know who's going to be coming up next. So in the same way that you always push your team forward, right, and make them visible across the organization. Similarly, you're wanting to see from the people in your leadership team, their teams, is that they're doing the same for their people, right? And trying to take the same approach and developing them and pushing them forward. So what do you need next in the team? Is anticipating, you have the business strategy, you have the digital and technology strategy, and most importantly, your execution strategy. Right? I'll just say something that might be a bit controversial. Coming up with a strategy is the easy bit. That's the easy part, right? Determining a really good execution strategy to deliver a whole range of programs that need lots of different underpinning capabilities. That's what's complex and takes a lot of skill. And I suppose it gets echoed in the fact that you can hire big consulting firms and they will do a strategy for you and maybe a bit of a roadmap, but they can never do execution, right? Because that's where the real skill is. So what you need to execute will continue to change over time, right? Year after year. But it's about looking forward at your program of what do you need to be doing, not only from a technology point of view, but from a change point of view in the organization, from an influencing point of view. What are the business challenges that are coming up over the horizon? Is there new regulations coming in that are going to influence what you're going to execute? And understanding what you're going to execute for the next year, 2 years, 3 years will be different to what you were executing the last 1 or 2 or 3 years. So it's about understanding that and ensuring that you get ahead of it and ensure you make the changes and tweaks to what the team needs to look like before it becomes urgent, right? So to know what's coming next, making sure that people have been developed from within your organization to come up, and knowing where you're going to have gaps. Having done that, you might still say, you know what, we're going to need to have someone strong in this particular area that we're just not going to end up developing that person, so we need to hire, right? But not waiting until you desperately need someone. So I suppose that's what I mean a lot by when I say if you're not moving forward, you're going backwards.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because exactly, you don't want to be in the desperation mode when you're hiring. And you do never know when people might leave, and it might be not the reason. It's not that they're not happy, but it's any personal reasons. Life is often unpredictable, so you can't be prepared for every scenario. But at least if you kind of having that backup plan in mind and know who can cover which skills.
Yeah, and it's absolutely true, Yana. Doesn't matter how, I described, how you would plan everything out nicely. But you know what? How often does it happen that something just bang happens, right? Either you didn't pick it or you couldn't have picked it. The critical aspect, though, is not sitting on your hands and responding quickly. And I don't mean responding quickly with an absolute decision quickly, but understanding the problem, consulting with people, and determining the right pathway forward. Quick prioritizing, understanding that going forward. It might be something as simple as one of your key team members resigns. Right? Someone tapped them on the shoulder for some great role, and you feel really good for them. You're really happy for them because it might be someone gets tapped for a CIO role somewhere else, right? And because you care for your team, you're really happy for them, but you've got a problem. So quickly I'll do is say, what do we need to do? Is there someone we can bring up that can at least act in the role temporarily or maybe permanently? But what I will be doing is, for example, I will be looking, I will sit down with that person who's leaving and say, great, okay, let's work out a plan of how you're going to transition, how you're going to hand over, how you're going to help me find the next person. Right?
Yeah, definitely. That's the best strategy. You know what you can do. I'm sure you have a colleague that, or the friend or someone who's doing similar. So ask around.
But also we'll have the discussion saying, let's talk about what was working. And I'll go, look, I've got some ideas how I might change the shape of this, because that's always an opportunity. When there's a team member change, there's always the opportunity to go, you've got some pent up smaller changes you're going to make and maybe some larger ones. Whenever something happens, that might seem like a negative thing, it's actually always an opportunity. You go, right, Brian's leaving, okay, that's going to trigger me doing a little bit of a tweak or more of the roles and responsibilities across the whole group. Right? You never pass up something like that. That's an opportunity, right? Because you need to continually refine to keep adjusting to stay a set course and direction. And you involve the whole team in that, right? Yes, I'm ultimately going to make the decision of what that will be, but there's a lot of smart people in my group, and they're going to give me a lot of great input. Doesn't mean I'll do what they're saying, but I really value their input.
Yeah, makes sense. And also maybe some of the team members do want to take some of these responsibilities, and it's opportunity for them to get involved.
Yep. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah. So I'm cautious about the time. We're already 50 minutes in our live stream, so we have 10 minutes left. I know there's one more point we wanted to discuss, and Raj Kumar actually asked that question before as well. Do we have a measure of the success for a high-performing team? So so what is success? How do we measure success, and how do we know that it's actually working?
That's it, right? So that was my last slide. How do you know it's working? So the first thing is, well, what's it? What is it that you need to achieve? It comes back to, why are we there as a group? And so it's working if you're achieving your strategic objectives. Right? Now that's a pretty high level statement, but it is about making sure that you've defined what it is that's important in terms of what is it that really matters. Right? Now you can measure a lot of things, and everything's important in one way or another. There's nothing that's unimportant. You might say, what about network uptime? That's really important, but that's not the really big point. That's minimum table stakes. It just needs to always work. All right? What really matters is, are you achieving those strategic outcomes, which means, are you executing the programs that you've set out to do? And to execute those programs, you've got to have the capabilities in place. You've got to have the right operating frameworks in place to execute those things. And so the measure for those things that really matter is being really clear on those programs that you're executing, where the improvements are that you've agreed with the business are the important things to achieve. Not just that I've thought I'd want to make the next improvement, right? Because even if we go back to talking about network uptime, is that what we have together agreed with the business that is the priority? Right? Rarely it'll be that sort of thing. But what is it that's important? And ensuring, and it really comes down to executing either those improvement programs or executing those major strategic projects and strategic programs, and measuring, are we achieving those things? And so each of those, they're the things you should be measuring. That's what really matters. And who really matters who are the people in the business that you really need to have the trust of. Right? Now, ultimately, it is everyone, and in a different way, though. So there's some senior leaders across the business who you need to have their trust. Right? So everyone in that leadership team must have the trust of those business leaders. So they've got a quite close working relationship. But at the same time, you have to have trust of your whole user community. So doing things like having the appropriate communication about what services are available or not available, and how you're evolving those and where we're going. Right? It's all about leadership. Is about, the important part of leadership is communicating and bringing people on the journey. Right. So what we'll do is we actually measure those programs, and we measure the relationships. Right? Measure the relationships, because it is about those relationships. And there's
how do you measure relationships?
Pass. No. It's having absolute quantitative measures can be challenging, although you can do some of it, particularly with a broader user community, through surveys, right? But it's the questions that you ask, right? And it's also it's the questions, so it's the broader community, but just as important is those relationships with senior people across the organisation. And you actually ask for their feedback on those plans and how those plans have been going. Are the plans still right? Do you feel that we've been executing against those? Right? Are these people in the technology leadership team, have they provided you the information, the communication you need to ensure that you understand where we're going? Right? Do you feel that you can provide feedback on the execution of those programs? And that's doesn't actually have to be a survey. That can be, it also comes into how you construct your governance mechanisms. So ensuring that you've got the appropriate people in the governance mechanisms, and you actually have that as part of your governance cycle to be reviewing those views. And so ultimately, measuring the sentiment is a critical part of good governance.
James is saying you measure a relationship by how well you build those relationships.
Is that what I said?
No, it's Rich Kumar is saying exactly the feedback form to stakeholders is what we did after every release.
Yeah, great. Yeah. And look, and there's lots of different ways to do it. The important thing is that you're doing it, which means that ultimately you'll do that in one way or another. If you value that is an important thing, it's about that you value those relationships yourself. So I will do it because I value those relationships. I need to know because that's what's important to me, and I know I believe that's important to them.
Yeah.
And I value their input. I value their views. Those business leaders across the organisation. It's not just going to be, that idiot doesn't know what he's talking about. Right? He doesn't get it. No, there needs to be a respect there for the value of people's views.
Renzo, we can probably talk about this for another few hours, but I'm cautious about the time. We have 3 minutes left in our live stream. Guys, I know if you have last questions, probably you can still put it in the comments, but we don't have time to answer them online. We can take some questions offline if we need to. Before I'll finish this live stream, I'm going to make the announcement for next week, and Renzo gonna choose the winner for today's giveaway. And today's giveaway is, as usual, a virtual coffee chat with 30 minutes virtual coffee chat with our speakers. So 30 minutes virtual coffee chat with Renzo. So while Renzo looking at the comments and picking the lucky winner, I just do a quick announcement for next week. Next week is 6th of December. Here we go. Summer is here. Christmas is almost here too. 6th of December next week, we're going to speak with David. David is CIO as well. So, we have a few CIOs coming to our streams this month. And he's going to talk about navigating the CIO career path, steps and challenges. So he's going to talk about his journey and give some advice to someone who thinking to progress their career in that direction. So that's David next week. And Renzo, who is the lucky winner of today's giveaway?
Okay. I think that would be James Castos.
James Castos, here we go. Building relationship on how well to build relationship. James, I'll make sure I connect you with Renzo, and you can organize the quick coffee, virtual coffee chat together. So, and Renzo, just to put you on the spot to finish this live stream, can you please share with us your just favorite inspirational quote, or I don't know, the statement you live by?
Geez, okay, you have put me on the spot there. I'm all out. Like I mentioned it during the discussion here today, and never confuse leadership with decision authority.
Leadership for leading and leadership for serving people, not by counting how many people report to you.
Yeah. Well, it's just not. Yeah, leading is leading people. Leadership is not having that decision authority. That's separate things. So,
guys, make sure to think about your leadership skills through this lens. Thank you so much, everyone, for who's been staying with us for whole hour tonight. James saying thank you. He'll definitely reach out to set up the session. Please make sure to like this video as usual. If you miss any parts of it, the live stream will be available as a replay on the channel. And I'm really excited to see everyone next week. Thank you so much, Renzo, as well, for so many insights. And I'm sure everyone get a lot of interesting insights today, and hopefully going to use it when they build their leadership experience.
My pleasure, Yana. It was enjoyable. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And see you